Hey everyone, let's talk today about winterizing your home. I don't know about you, where you are, but here the weather is starting to turn and it's starting to become fall. And with fall comes cold, and with cold comes ice, and with ice comes possible issues for your home if it's vacant in the winter. So I wanted to give you a few tips and pointers on how to take care of your pipes, how to take care of your vacant house if you're not there when the weather turns cold. So one of the first things, and this is really universal for all vacant houses, is you want to give your house the appearance that it's actually occupied even though it's vacant. This is just general, but maybe a little more so in the winter. You're going to have snow that comes and piles up, and it's going to be pretty obvious if you haven't stopped your mail and if you don't have somebody plowing your walk that your house is not being occupied. And with the lack of being occupied comes vandalism. A lot of times people will steal pipes, copper pipes for scrap metal, copper wiring out of the walls for scrap. It's a money-making deal. So if you have this in your home, you're going to want to consider taking those precautions to make sure that it doesn't look as vacant as it might be. The other major item when you consider winterization, and what people usually think of when they consider winterization of their home, is the plumbing system in your house. Water is going to do a lot of damage if it's not properly taken care of before the weather turns cold. There are really two options when you're winterizing your pipes. You can either do it with heat or without heat. If you're winterizing your pipes with heat, what you're doing is just turning that thermostat down. It stays on, your heat doesn't go off, but it stays at about 55 to keep the interior of your home warm enough that your pipes aren't going to freeze. If you choose to employ this method, you're going to want to consider whether or not you have backup power or some way of being notified if the power goes out. So if it's cold and your power goes out, your heat's not on, and so it's not going to protect your pipes. So you want to have a neighbor, or my dad has a home security system that will tell him if the power's out and how long it's been out. There's different means to do this, but you definitely, if you choose to employ this route, you're going to want to consider that. Also, you may want to wrap your hot water tank, because that will just give it an additional layer of insulation to keep it from freezing, because that can cause damage to your hot water tank. If you choose not to, okay, so the pros to using heat is that it's not difficult to employ. It's just a matter of adjusting your thermostat. The cons are that you are paying for heat during the winter, but that cost is going to be a whole lot less. Something else you may want to do if you choose to employ keeping your heat on during the winter is to have your water running still, not a lot, but just a very small amount, of trickle, just at the top of your house and at the bottom of your house. And by doing this, you're keeping water moving through the pipes. And as water moves through the pipes, moving water is a lot harder to freeze than standing water. If you notice in the winter, a river is gonna freeze over less quickly than a pond, because the pond is stagnant water and the river's moving. So it's the same concept in your house. Keep just a trickle of water on at the top and a trickle of water on at the bottom. It's expensive to pay for, not expensive, it's cost to pay for water that's being used at the top and bottom of your house and for the heat, but ultimately it's going to be less expensive than if you have burst pipes and you've got to go in and replace those, or if you've got burst pipes and nobody notices and it causes flooding or mold, even mold in your house. So the other method to do this is to not have your heat on, to cut those utilities, but then it takes a little more effort when you're draining down your pipes. Pipes, if they're set up correctly, run downhill. So when you shut off the water main, you're going to want to go and flush all your toilets. You're going to want to run all of your sinks. And then you're going to want to go down to the basement of your house and get as close to the bottom of your plumbing system as possible to drain the pipes there. For us, that's our washing machine, because it's in the basement. Sometimes there's a toilet in the basement. Just anything you can do to get to the lowest point where water is going to run, that's where you want to empty your pipes. Additionally, you can take antifreeze and then go back through and put antifreeze in your toilets, because your toilets have bends and curves within them that even flushing may not get all of that water out. And if you don't get all of that water out, If you don't have the antifreeze in there, you run the risk of cracking your toilet. Also, your hot water heater, you're going to want to empty your hot water heater because, well, turn it off also, then empty it because you don't want that water to freeze in your tank because that would be bad news. So those are the with heat and without heat ways to winterize. If you don't feel comfortable doing it without heat, but you don't necessarily have the means to monitor it with heat, feel free to give a plumber a call, and they're happy to come out and do that for a charge. So that way you can be confident and assured that you're not going to have problems come spring. Another thing that people don't necessarily think of when they're winterizing, but is also an issue with respect to water, is your roof and your gutters. Your roof and your gutters are going to be subject to snow and rain and other elements, and if you don't have your gutters cleaned, then that water has a chance of backing up and sitting on your roof. If there's water sitting on your roof and not draining properly, and it comes along and freezes, it's going to get up under your shingles, it's going to freeze, and it's going to push those shingles up, which is going to cause damage to your roof. And that can potentially cause damage to the interior of your house if your house is not water safe. So make sure that you get your gutters cleaned. You're going to want to examine trees around your house for whether or not they're touching your house, or they have the potential to, if the wind blows, cause damage to your roof, because again, damage to your roof can be damage to your house. So those are very important. You may even have a roofer come out and just inspect the flashing, which is the areas around chimneys and vents. Those are the most likely to have leaks that come down into your house, and nobody's going to notice if it's vacant. And it's going to, again, with water intrusion and freezing temperatures, it causes expansion and contraction that can cause cracks and other issues with your house. So those are my 3 tips, my 3 things that you should consider when you're winterizing your house. I hope that was helpful. Thanks.